What if everything we've been told about autoimmunity is wrong? I'm Elizabeth Yarnell. After awakening partially blind one morning in 1999, a doctor told me my multiple sclerosis would put me in a wheelchair within 10 years. I refused to accept that as the end of the story, so I started investigating. Welcome to the Inflammation Investigator, the podcast that uncovers the inflammation lurking underneath your ailments. Because autoimmune and chronic conditions should not be viewed as death knells when they are actually alarm bells. I'm a traditional naturopath and founder of the Inflammation Academy. And in 2 episodes every week, we dig into what conventional medicine might be missing. If you're living with chronic or unexplained symptoms, this investigation is for you. Your body has been trying to tell you something. Let's start listening. We are so excited today to welcome to the podcast Kevin Ellis. Kevin Ellis, better known as the Bone Coach, is a Forbes-featured integrative health coach, podcaster, and the founder of bonecoach.com. Through a unique 3-step process and a world-class coaching program called the Stronger Bones Solution, he and his credentialed team have helped thousands of people with osteopenia and osteoporosis in over 1,500 cities across the world get confident in their Stronger Bones plan. Today, the Bone Coach community has grown to over 285,000 people focused on osteoporosis reversal and achieving their Stronger Bone goals. His mission is to help millions of people with osteoporosis build stronger bones and to help our children and grandchildren create strong and healthy foundation so they can lead long, active lives. Kevin, welcome to the Inflammation Investigator. I'm so excited that you're here.
It's so great to be here. Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me.
So just as a little background, I have known Kevin for, maybe 5 years or so, and we have been buds. And I have always been super, super impressed with everything that he has built with this whole osteoporosis, osteopenia program. And I really want Kevin to share his story with you because I think it's really powerful. So how did you get into this, Kevin?
Yeah, most people, when they think about your bones, you're not thinking about a younger male. And you might be thinking like, why is a younger male talking about bone health? So my whole path and journey in the world of bone health started because of a diagnosis of osteoporosis in my early 30s. And, I would take my entire journey back before that. My father passed away from cancer when I was about 2 months old. My whole life, I had this feeling that I was going to, follow in his footsteps to an early grave, not be there for my kids. I went in the Marines, got out, thought I was just this tough guy who could just endure anything. And then when I got out of the Marines, I started having a lot of health issues. I had high stress, poor sleep, chronic digestive issues, found out I had celiac disease. And for those who are not familiar with celiac disease, it's an autoimmune condition where when you ingest gluten, it damages the villi, these tiny little nutrient absorption centers in your small intestine, and they're responsible for absorbing nutrients from the food you eat and shuttling them into your bloodstream to help you build stronger muscle, stronger bones. Well, my villi were blunted and damaged, and they couldn't do their job. And so your body still needs these important nutrients to execute its daily functions. One of them is calcium. Muscle contractions, nerve impulses, you need this. And I wasn't able to absorb it. And so my body was going to the largest reserve of minerals I have, just like all of us, and it was pulling from there. And so that led to bone loss and then a diagnosis of osteoporosis. And that set me down this path of like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be here for my kids. When I started looking up osteoporosis, what most people end up finding is it's bone medications that you don't want to take, and inadequate advice of just take calcium and vitamin D. And there's so much more to it than that. So I built a program. That community has now grown to a team of 40 plus. and then a community now of about over 285,000 people at this point. And something I'm very passionate about. We help people all over the world build stronger bones every day. And I'm glad that I can talk to people about it.
It's so impressive, I have to say. One of the things I just want to pick up on that you mentioned was that our bones are our largest source of minerals in our body. And that's where, if when we become deficient, that's where our body, because the body is built to survive, that's where we're going to steal from, our bones. So I don't know if everybody recognizes that and understands that that is really what is happening in osteoporosis or osteopenia. So now that I'm saying both those words, maybe you could define them a little better for us.
Yeah, I absolutely can. And what's interesting about our bones is when people think about our bones, they think of just these static structures that like hold us upright and carry us through life. And they do that, and they do a good job of it. At the same time, they're a living tissue. They're an endocrine organ. And so you just have to understand that there's different blood cells that are involved in the process. One of the things that it has is not only just minerals, but also your bones are 50% protein by volume. They're made up of amino acids. There is collagen protein matrix with minerals laced in there. And when you are having bone loss, it's not like your body is just going in and selectively plucking out the minerals. It's actually tearing down the whole protein matrix structure to release those minerals. And so you just have to be aware that there are a lot of things that can influence that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how inflammation impacts that. But a lot of times what happens is when people have bone loss, there can be multiple causes of it. There can be primary causes, which are typically hormonal. There can be secondary causes, which are behaviors, conditions, diseases, disorders, medications. And we don't want to make an assumption that it's just hormones or a natural part of aging, because a lot of times there are secondary causes and factors. If you're listening to this and you've been following Elizabeth for a long time, you know that there are other factors that can impact your health, inflammation, autoimmune conditions. And a lot of times when we have these conditions, there are things in our body that can speak in the same language as the cells that break down bone, which can then lead to bone loss too. So you just have to be aware that that could be possibly taking place. And then what happens is we go to our doctor and we get this thing called a bone density scan. It's measured by either a DEXA scan or a REM scan. Tells you your bone density. It generates a score. And if that score is +1 or -1, somewhere in between there, that's considered normal and healthy. If it's -1 to -2.5, that's considered osteopenia, which is like a precursor to osteoporosis. And if it's -2.5 or lower, so -2.6, -2.7, so on and so forth, that is considered osteoporosis. The greater the negative number becomes, the more severe the osteoporosis. But what most people don't realize is there's more to the picture than just bone density. There are actually 3 different pillars of bone strength we need to be looking at. There is bone density, there is bone quality, and there is bone turnover. So bone density is the actual mineral content of the bone. So if you go get this bone density scan and you get this score, that T-score is what it's going to say, T-score and T-score. But if you get this score and it says -2.5, that's your bone density. What a lot of people don't have at that point is their bone quality. So bone quality is the structural integrity of the bone, the microarchitecture and how it's organized. Density and quality combine to create bone strength. So if you want to understand your bone quality, there is an add-on software to a DEXA scan called TBS. And you can ask the facility that you're going to, hey, do you have TBS capability? If they say yes, you can now get 2 of the 3 pillars of bone strength in your scan. So you can get density and quality at the same time. If you get something called a REM scan, that can tell you density and quality at the same time. And then there is a 3rd pillar of bone strength that people should be aware of. And this tells you if you're actively losing bone right now. And this is called bone turnover. And bone turnover looks at the activity level of cells that are breaking down and building up your bones right now. And so if there's a test called the serum CTX test that you can get, and it's a blood test. And if that activity level is off or elevated or really high or not where it needs to be, it can be an indicator of active bone loss. So if you really want to understand where you're at right now, you can get a bone density scan, ask to see if you can get bone quality, and then know that you need to get this bone turnover testing. I call it an active bone loss test, CTX. There are places to get it outside of your doctor if you want.
I feel like these three tests should be the standard of care when we're talking about doctors diagnosing people with osteopenia or osteoporosis. Why are they only focusing on one of these three things?
Yeah, a great question. I would say I don't see it as a fault of the physician or the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the doctors that, we have a lot of medical doctors that come through our programs as participants to learn how to help their patients better. It's the system, though, that they're in that is not designed to help the patient achieve the best possible health outcome. And when you only have 15 minutes with a patient to sit down, have a conversation, take in their full health history, give them a plan, that plan looks like a very templated, simple, take calcium, take vitamin D, go for a walk, don't lift anything heavy. We'll go get this thing from the pharmacy that may or may not actually help you. We'll see you in 2 years for your next bone density scan. That's what happens in a 15-minute conversation. And it's not that that doctor doesn't want to help the patient. It's just that they don't have the time and the system is not designed for it. So a lot of times, even if a patient were to go into their doctor and say, hey, I know I've got bone density, but I've only got part of the picture. And look, if you've got osteoporosis on a bone density scan, you still need to take the proactive steps to prevent loss and to build bone strength. But just know there's usually not this visceral situation where you have to act in that moment and make a decision, jumping into a medication potentially that you could be on for multiple years, multiple medications, or even a lifetime. And I think it's important. Like, I'm not anti-medication, nor is our team, but I'm pro do everything you possibly can naturally first before considering that as an option. Because there are I see situations where people have had 15 or more fractures. They've got really poor bone quality. That person needs a medication plus everything else. But there are people who get this diagnosis that they don't have poor bone quality and they're not actively losing bone and they don't need to be on a bisphosphonate like a Fosamax or a Reclass or something like that. So there's a lot of nuance to that. So don't take this as medical advice as I'm speaking it, but just know there's more education you need outside of that conversation with your doctor.
So you mentioned that celiac disease was one of the factors that influenced your own health diagnosis with osteopenia and osteoporosis. How does that connect?
Yeah, there are a couple different ways. So celiac disease is an autoimmune condition. So the damage to the villi, those tiny little nutrient absorption centers, can affect nutrient absorption. So anything that's affecting nutrient absorption and your body being able to take in and pull into your body and reuse those inputs for stronger bones, that's going to affect your ability to not just build stronger bones, but even to maintain the structure. So if you are someone who has chronic digestive issues or so bloating, belching, burping, gas, constipation, diarrhea, IBS, loose stools, and that's a chronic thing for a long period of time, just know there might be an issue with nutrient absorption there. And if you have celiac disease, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, or maybe like gut infections too, where you have, I liken our gut to like the soil and your villi are like roots in the soil. You can have bad bugs in your soil. So you could have maybe parasites or something that are stealing those nutrients, or you could have good bugs, but they're in the wrong place. So that would be like SIBO. Okay. So those kinds of situations could all affect nutrient absorption and prevent you from getting the raw materials your bones need to become stronger, and affect a lot of other health issues too. That's the first way. The second way is that because 70% of our immune system is in the gut, the cells that break down bone are a form of white blood cells. So anything relating to the immune system and anything that's stimulating that is speaking in the same language as the cells that break down bone. So you just have to be aware that if you do have these chronic digestive issues or gut health issues, that nutrient absorption may be a problem, and it's also stimulating the immune system, which speaks in the same language as the cells that break down bone. So there's kind of a 1-2 punch there.
I would hazard a guess that most people who are having digestive dysfunction probably aren't thinking that it's going to be affecting their bone health.
No,
That feels like that might be a surprise to a lot of people.
Yes. And there are some other factors too that play into this. I would even shift to, sometimes people take certain medications for like PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, H2 receptor antagonist drugs, ranitidine, those kinds of things. And you have to know that a lot of times when they take those, they're taking it because they're having heartburn or indigestion or something like that they're trying to solve for. And a lot of those situations too, when a person takes that medication, they may actually have low stomach acid. So we're suppressing a stomach acid that we may not actually already have in the first place. So in those situations, this is kind of another way that gut health is affected, is that you need good stomach acid levels to break down and absorb the nutrients from the food you're eating. So your bones, I said, are 50% protein by volume. You need amino acids. You need good stomach acid to support that. Calcium, magnesium, iron, B12, all those, you need good healthy stomach acid levels to support that. And if you are taking these certain medications, just know the downstream effect of that could be impacting nutrients and gut health too.
And bones.
Of course. Yeah. Anything that, if you were to go upstream to those things, the end impact is going to be potentially health issues or even your bones too.
I feel like when I was growing up, and I grew up in a medical household with a family of doctors, that I always learned or was under the impression that bones, once you were fully grown, your bones were set, kind of like your teeth. But is that true? Can you repair bones? Can you grow new bones?
Great question. Yeah. So if you are not just listening for yourself, but if you have kids and grandkids, also pay attention to this. This is really important. Your bones, I said, they're this collagen protein matrix with minerals laced in there. And the things we do early on in life have a dramatic impact on what our later years look like. 90% of your bone mass is put on by the time you turn 18. The remaining 10% fills in by the time you turn 30. So if when you were younger, you led a sedentary lifestyle, you weren't out playing sports or moving your body in short, sharp, dynamic movements, stimulating, surprising the bones, if you weren't doing gymnastics or things like that, if you didn't have good nutrition, if you weren't getting vitamin D, vitamin K2, calcium, vitamin C, magnesium, these important nutrients to support good bone health from a young age, and you were eating you were drinking sugary soft drinks, eating lots of candy, and a lot of our parents just didn't have this education when they were younger. And so it's not to fault anybody, but it's time that we get educated about this to make sure we support our kids in developing good, healthy, dense, quality bone structure from a young age. Some of the other things, eating disorders, taking certain medications, glucocorticoid medications, prednisone, those kinds of things can impact bones from a young age too. So just keep that in mind. And then once you hit 30, that's when you hit peak bone mass. And a lot of times as people get later in life, they don't ever know if they actually reached what their level of peak bone mass was. That's actually why I like to see 30 and 40-year-olds getting scans for their bone density, bone quality, bone turnover. Get a baseline, understand where you're at, monitor future changes from that baseline. That's a great approach to just be educated and empowered and not ignoring something because you don't want to know the answer to it. And then when you get older, a lot of times for women, especially when you hit menopause, and then for the 5 years after, if you're not doing proactive preventative things, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which there's a lot of news around that right now, if you're not doing things like that, there's the potential for you to lose up to 20% of your bone mass in a very short period of time after that if you're not taking preventative measures. So you just have to be aware that some of these things can and will take place. But the good news is you can prevent that loss. You can turn things around. You can build bone strength. That is absolutely possible. You just need to measure, monitor the right things, and then do the right steps to get there.
Let's talk a little bit about the role of exercise in bone health and bone density. I hear a lot about, especially as a postmenopausal woman, about weight-bearing exercise in particular for your bone health. What is the difference between weight-bearing exercise and just going for a walk or regular exercise?
Yeah, I mean, most people are just told, go for a walk, don't lift heavy. And if they get the diagnosis of osteopenia, osteoporosis, I can tell you, if you have good bone quality and your bone density has not declined past a certain point, that may be some of the worst advice you could take, is to not lift heavy. We need to provide the stimulus. Our bones need to become stronger. And walking by itself is not enough. Walking is good. It's good for our health, but it's not enough to maintain or even especially build bone strength too. And why would that be? Well, think about it. When you're walking, even if you're getting your 10,000 steps in a day, you're walking in the same direction. There's no surprise to the bones. Everything's predictable. Pit pat, and you're walking the same direction for a long period of time, and there's no new varied stimulus. Also, you're only working your lower half. And sometimes fractures happen up here in the forearm area or other areas of our body, and they're not getting impact or exercise that they actually need. So there's no stimulus in that upper half of our body. So walking is just not enough. Then we need different types of stimuli for our bones. You need muscle pulling on bone, and you need impact. So muscle pulling on bone. There's a mechanical signal that sends a chemical signal to tell the bones to become stronger. And then there's different types of exercise also. There's weight-bearing exercise, there's non-weight-bearing exercise, and there's muscle strengthening and resistance training exercise. So let's break each of these down. Weight-bearing exercise is where your body and your bones are working against gravity to keep you upright. They're things you're doing on your feet. They're placing good, healthy stress on the bones. That would be walking. So walking is okay. That falls into that category. Jogging.
Oh, walking is a weight-bearing exercise?
It's weight-bearing exercise, yeah. Walking, jogging.
Because you're bearing your own weight as opposed to swimming.
That's right. So walking, jogging, hiking, gardening, playing pickleball, playing with the kids, the grandkids out in the yard, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, Qigong. All of those are weight-bearing exercises. Now, if you have osteoporosis and you're trying to protect yourself from fracture, there are modifications that you have to make. I won't go into those now, but there are modifications you make. And then there's also non-weight-bearing exercise. Now, this is typically where cycling, but especially swimming, falls into that category. So if you're listening to this and you are a swimmer, or you like to swim, or that's part of your exercise plan, that's great. You can keep doing that. But you can't just swim laps 5 days out of the week, get out of the pool and say, I got my exercise in. You didn't. I mean, you did, but you didn't do enough for your bones. Because when you're in the pool, you're not placing that good, healthy stress on the bones. It's the same thing astronauts deal with when they go up into space. And that's why a lot of them, if they don't take the proactive measures, they can lose muscle and bone very quickly. And so you need to actually be providing that stimulus. And that's where this next type of exercise comes in, where it's muscle strengthening and resistance training exercise. And that's where you use things like dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, maybe the machines at the gym, if that's where your comfort level is at. Variable resistance bands are great. And then you focus on doing exercises, obviously with good form. That's probably the most important starting point. Let's just start there. Good form, good body mechanics. I always tell people, if you can't apply the stimulus with good form, you should not apply the stimulus at all. Because injuries, especially as we get older, they're a lot harder to recover from, because the process of bone remodeling slows down over time. The cells that are involved in that process become less efficient. So we really want to protect ourselves as we're doing exercises. So good form, good body mechanics, that's most important. So don't remove any ego that you would have from doing a lift that I'm going to talk about, and just work up slowly. So then the lifts that we would get into, some really great ones: squats, deadlifts, overhead presses. As long as you don't have vertebral or compression fractures, those can be good exercises to incorporate into your plan. And then also, again, you still proceed with caution if you already have low bone density or osteoporosis, but some of those impact exercises like box jumps or hops or heel drops or jumping jacks, those kinds of things can also help provide good stimulus for the bones. And there are other exercises to go in there. And then when we get into the exercises, 5 to 10 repetition range, where you're struggling with good form, can be okay. So that can be a good repetition range to be in. And again, I think the most important thing here is it's not just walking. I think we can see now, like there's different things we have to be incorporating to really round out a stronger bones plan from an exercise perspective.
That's a really good point. I see a lot of people focus on the 10,000 steps a day goal, which is great, but we should know that particular goal was created by the fitness tracker company, not from any medical reality. And it's not be all end all. It's not everything. You need to have much more of a well-rounded approach to keeping your body healthy and strong.
Yeah.
So kind of the last thing I want to touch on a little bit is vitamin D and the role of that. I know that when I have broken bones, one of the things I reach for is to really up my vitamin D impact and make sure that I have a lot of soluble fats going around my body to transport that vitamin D. What can you say about vitamin D and bone health?
Vitamin D is incredibly important. So vitamin D, a couple ways that it helps impact bones. Number one, increases intestinal absorption of calcium. Calcium is the primary mineral constituent of your bones. You need it. Ideally, we're getting as much of that as we can from food, but then vitamin D is going to help with the intestinal absorption of that. It's going to reduce urinary excretion of calcium. It's going to promote higher bone mineral density. It's going to help slow bone loss and help lower fracture risk. And there's lots of studies supporting. There is a reason why doctors recommend vitamin D and calcium. They are important. What I would say is a lot of people don't know what their actual vitamin D levels are, or if they get them, when I see them, they're usually low. They're in like the 20 to 30 NGML range. The normal range is 30 to 100 NGML. And if you're consistently low, especially if you're heading into fall or winter or something like that, you need to be aware of that. And you need to be taking proactive measures. And a lot of times supplementation could be helpful in those situations to get your levels up. And then because vitamin D is a hormone, you need to monitor the effectiveness of what you're doing. So if you are supplementing with vitamin D, get yourself a 25 hydroxy vitamin D test. Start with a baseline of where you're at today. And then 3 months into supplementing with vitamin D, or take a look where your level's at again. What is the effectiveness of the supplement you're taking? Is it actually having the intended impact that you want? Or are you somebody who has genetic issues with vitamin D, with absorption, conversion, transport, all those things could be impacting you. And you may be one of those people who needs higher vitamin D. And it's not vitamin D3 is the one that we want to be focused on.
Right.
But again, test those levels, know where you're at. You know, it's always better to make objective decisions instead of assumptions. I prefer people to do that. There are other important nutrients though, outside of vitamin D. So calcium, we already talked about. I don't need to hit that one any harder. What I do tell people for calcium is that try to get as much as you can from your food. But what I find is people who are trying to put an autoimmune condition into remission, a lot of times dairy is one of the recommendations to be pulled out and for people. And so it is a good bioavailable source of calcium. It's not about just drink a bunch of milk, but you can incorporate things like 24-hour yogurts or grass-fed kefir, right? Where you're not just getting calcium, you're getting protein and other minerals and other nutrients. And there's other benefits to that. But let's say you do pull out dairy from your diet, or it causes an inflammation for you, and that's not the right fit. We need to look at foods that have calcium that aren't dairy. So two of my favorites here. Arugula is one of them. It's a plant-based source of calcium that is low oxalate. Oxalates are an anti-nutrient, can bind up bone-healthy nutrients, prevent you from absorbing that calcium or making full use of it. And a lot of times, if people have chronic digestive issues, when they consume oxalate-rich foods, it could cause joint pain or stiffness in other areas, or could lead to kidney stones over time. So, or if you have issues with mold, also there could be an oxalate issue that you're dealing with. So I love arugula, same cruciferous family of vegetables as broccoli and kale. It's an easy addition. You can saute it lightly with some good quality extra virgin olive oil or with some avocado oil or ghee. That's a great addition. You can also do it as a side salad. Take it out, drop it on the side. It's very easy to do. So that's one. The second one is sardines or mackerel, these smaller fish that have the bones in. They are not hard, pokey bones that are going to hurt your mouth. I'm not going to make the case here. I know people listening are going to be like, all right, this guy lost me here. But the bones, they almost melt in your mouth, right? And the reason I like them is because sardines and mackerel, they're smaller fish that usually have lower levels of like heavy metals. And then they also contain protein. They contain minerals in the right ratio your own bones need, including calcium. And they can include omega-3s, which are dampeners of inflammation. So those two foods are great calcium-rich foods. And then two other nutrients real quick. Magnesium is important. As you increase your vitamin D and calcium intake, you need to increase magnesium too. And then vitamin C. Vitamin C is key to maintaining and developing a healthy skeleton. It is, it's helpful for pro-collagen synthesis. And we just need to make sure we're getting it. So if you're not supplementing with it, you need to make sure you're consuming, citrus food like lemons and limes and those kinds of things. We're also consuming berries. And when we go with berries, go with organic berries too. So those are some helpful additions. There's plenty more, but that's a good starting point.
Those are really great suggestions. It made me think of anchovies, which I'd never really liked until I just recently visited the north of Spain, and then I became a big fan of anchovies.
Quality in those areas. So I went to Portugal too, which is like that same whole
area. Yep.
And I definitely noticed a difference in quality and freshness too. I actually recorded a video when I had gone to Portugal. There was this huge store of just sardines. And I think it was more for like tourists, but I had gone in and the whole wall, everything was lined with fresh sardine cans. I had a heyday. I opened it up right outside, was just eating sardines like an animal outside of the sardine shop. It was great. I loved it.
Excellent. So, is there anything else that we should be aware of? Any last final thoughts before I want to hear a little bit about your programs and how people can really get in touch with you and learn more?
Yeah, thanks so much. So let's just summarize what a Stronger Bones plan looks like. So
Okay.
a lot of times what happens when people start focusing on improving their bones is they only pull in these tactical pieces, or they've got a little bit of information like prunes are good for osteoporosis and this and that, but it's not usually designed in a way for them. And a lot of times these tactical pieces are missing a lot of really important foundational things for stronger bones, and we don't want to miss things. So I always tell people, do it right the first time, learn the process, set yourself up for success, and then it just kind of goes on autopilot. It just becomes part of your life. And then 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's going to put you in a much better position to live a long, strong, active life. So first thing we need to do, identify and address root cause issues of bone loss. So if you are actively losing bone right now, what are the things causing and contributing to that? We can figure that out. Second thing, nourish the body. Take in the right nutrients in the right amounts. Actually absorb those nutrients. Make sure those nutrients make it to the cell level. Third, build strength of body, mind, and bone in a way that prevents fracture and injury. Reduce the stress. Improve the sleep. Optimize the hormones. Get the right exercise plan in place. Provide the stimulus the bones need to become stronger in a way that prevents fracture and injury. So if we're looking at things, now we can see why tactical pieces don't really work in this situation. We have to zoom out, look at the bigger picture, get structured step-by-step guidance. And that's what we help people with every single day.
It makes so much sense. And I don't think this is what our medical system is offering. That really, as you were saying at the beginning, doctors don't really have time in their 15-minute slot to talk with you about all of these factors and to really give you the guidance that can really help make a difference in osteoporosis progression. I know my 82-year-old aunt has lost already, I think, 4 or 5 inches of height from her osteoporosis, and honestly spends most of her time in bed because that's where she's most comfortable. And it has been a whole journey of fracture after fracture after fracture for her, and disintegration of her vertebrae, and all kinds of really awful side effects to have to live with as you age. That is another thing. I know a lot of doctors kind of just shrug and say, you know what, this is just what getting older is all about. Do you agree with that?
I don't. It's a very disempowering way to view this too. Like if somebody is already fracturing, I want to know, why are they fracturing? Genetics. Yes, of course, genetics play a role. And if you have a family history of it, of course, there's a higher likelihood that you can go down that path. At the same time, genetics aren't everything. And there are ways you can help your cells express themselves more favorably. There are things that you can do. And if people are losing bone and fracturing, why are they losing bone? Why is their bone structure getting weaker? There is something causing that. We can go in and figure out what that is, address that issue so that you can stabilize the loss, prevent yourself from getting to a point where your bones keep getting weaker and you keep fracturing. Or if you can actually get to the point where you're building. We can look at these near-term markers and understand where people are at. We can get them the right nutrients. There are actually compounds and nutrients that you're probably not going to get from your diet. But so I actually built a whole nother company around bone health nutrients called Healthy Bones Co. I built this company so that I could go partner with researchers and learn about what are the nutrients and compounds that help slow bone loss. What has randomized control trials behind it that we can actually put into products to give people the nutrients that they need to support stronger, healthier bones. And there are some that have great research behind it. Delta and gamma tocotrienols actually have great research supporting bone health, where we can see a reduction in bone resorption or breakdown and an improvement in bone turnover. GG, geranylgeraniol. Geranylgeraniol is an endogenous nutrient, which means we make less of it as we age. And as we take things like statins and bisphosphonate medications, it can actually deplete our GG levels. So when you supplement with this nutrient, it serves as a precursor to CoQ10 and MK4. Vitamin K2, MK4, that helps make sure that calcium that you're taking goes to the bones and to build stronger bones, and not the soft tissues like the kidneys and the arteries. And so that's a good set. There's some other nutrients, Dalbergia siso, which is also called Indian rosewood. This is one that has great studies supporting bone regeneration, bone repair, speeding of fracture healing. Cissus quadrangularis also has great studies behind it. But a lot of times when you go to your doctors, they're not set up to talk about these nutrients. The tool they have in their toolkit is a pharmaceutical. It's not to fault them, but it is to fault the system.
Very good point. Very good point. Okay, so if people who have been listening to this are thinking, oh, you know what? I need more advice, more guidance with my bone health, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can always find us at bonecoach.com. That's probably the best place. I actually, over the years, I've built 3 bone health companies. Everything I do is bone health. I am obsessed with this. I go very deep in this. And so bonecoach.com is where we have Stronger Bones programs, the Stronger Bone Solution. That's helped thousands of people, credential team. It has helped a lot of people build stronger bones, improve bone density, bone quality, stop fracturing. So that's a great place to go to bonecoach.com. Healthybonesco.com is where all those nutrients that can help support bones, and especially the ones that have great research behind them for bone turnover and bone density, those can be found at healthybonesco.com. And then osteoiq.com is something I created that actually gives bone health intelligence. And the way this is moving is I want people to not just be in a reactive model with their bone health. I want them to be in a predictive situation where if I do these things and I pull these levers, this is the potential result I could expect. And so that is the direction all of this is moving, is not reaction, prevention, and being empowered to make the best decisions. So all that is at osteoiq.com.
I love this very holistic solution, this holistic world that you have created to help people with their bone health. Is there anything else that you would like to, anywhere else you'd like to point people toward or anything?
You can always find me on social at Bone Coach or at Bone Coach Kevin. So all the social channels, Instagram, Facebook. We've got a podcast. Elizabeth is going to be on our podcast too. And so there's all that, but bonecoach.com is probably the best place. And then just kind of a parting note that I would share with people is I know when you're on a health journey, I've been on one myself, and I see this with people every single day, and people can be really hard on themselves. And I would just say, approach things with curiosity instead of expectation, and you will be a lot less harder on yourself, and the journey will be a lot better. And that disappointment that you might have when you try something, you invest all your time and effort and hard-earned dollars into something, and it doesn't work perfectly the first time, that disappointment will disappear when you shift to this state of being curious. So I wish everybody, many blessings, good health on your journey. If you need help with your bones, we're here for you. And I know Elizabeth is a fantastic, phenomenal resource as well.
Well, great advice. Thank you for ending on such a wonderful, positive note. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the Inflammation Investigator today. I think this has been really valuable knowledge, and I'm excited to share it with the world.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's Another case filed on the Inflammation Investigator. Remember, every symptom is your body's way of communicating. We just need to learn the language. If today's episode sparked something for you, I want to hear about it. Share your own investigation discoveries with me on social media at Elizabeth Yarnell, or find me at elizabethyarnell.com. Your experience could be exactly what another listener needs to hear. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And here's the thing about investigations. They work best when you're not going it alone. If this podcast is helping you uncover the answers you've been searching for, please like, rate, subscribe, and review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. As a new podcast, these actions mean more than you know. Want to dive deeper into your own inflammation investigation? Head over to inflammationinvestigator.com, where you can take my free inflammation quiz to uncover which hidden triggers might be affecting your health. Until next time, this is Elizabeth Yarnell, your inflammation investigator, reminding you that the solutions to your health issues are out there. Let's find them together.